What do Whitney Houston, Joan Rivers, and church organ pipes have in common? One very creative person. And as a child prodigy, encouraged by his mother, and later a world-renowned fashion designer, Eugene Stutzman, with his partner Alexander Wallace, became famous, among the famous, for their dramatic and elegant couture under the brand Eugene Alexander. And today, Eugene expresses his creative talents quite differently through creating pipes for digital organs that are used in theaters and churches. So, Eugene, how did you get from silk and chiffon to metal fabrication?
I have to think about that. How did I get there? Well, I was always interested in the pipe organ as sculpture. If you go into a cathedral, Cologne Cathedral, the pipe organ is this gorgeous sculpture that's up there. And my major in college and grad school was sculpture. So that was always something I loved about the pipe organ, aside from the wonderful music that it adds to our lives.
But before that, you were in fashion. You were in what people would call couture, very high-end, very customized fashion. And your partner at the time was also your business partner.
Correct.
And how did you guys get into creating these fashion statements? They were fashion statements at the time.
We started with a very small line. Alex had been in a movie that was shot here, Honky Tonk Freeway. He played a corrupt county commissioner.
Oh, I'd never heard of such a thing.
It was a John Schlesinger film.
Okay.
But, the costume designer saw some work that I had done and said, you should take these to New York. So Alex went to New York. And we were very fortunate in getting an agent almost immediately, a very good agent to represent us. And our first customer was Saks, and we had an order from Lily Rubin, Lord & Taylor, Neiman Marcus, all the major stores had all discovered us. So we were the darlings that first season.
I'll bet. And what year was that?
That was 82.
82. Were you a fashion designer prior to that, or what were you doing?
I had worked in costumes, and teaching school here in Florida.
What's the difference between a costume and some of these dresses that you've created?
That's a very fine line, and it's very difficult to navigate. In order to do these extravagant pieces that women were buying to monumentalize the big moments of their life. So we played an important part. So at fashion shows, we would try and communicate with our customer and find out what they needed to hide. You know,
Yes.
One woman said, Eugene, take a good look at my arms. I don't want to show this, but I have good boobs. So
sounds like something Joan Rivers would say.
Yes.
But you wouldn't say who it was who said that.
No.
Of course not. Of course not. I was trying to maybe see if we got a little inside scoop here. Tell me about Whitney Houston. And you designed something for her or something that she liked? Tell me that story.
She was on 7th Avenue, and she was going to be, Time Magazine was doing a cover story on Whitney Houston to come to their showroom. And she had read about us, and she liked this white dress we had with the big flowers, and she came in. She was just tiny. We had to use
like clips.
Gaffer clips all the way down the back of a size 4 in order to have her fit it. So she was like back then like a 2. She was very thin and just wonderful, very, very courteous and kind.
But that dress was seen again elsewhere, wasn't it?
Then, yes, it was in the movie Sex and the City. Yeah. I saw the commercial for the movie and I thought, wow, they got my dress in a vintage clothing store, I guess. We were never credited for the dress, but that's the way it is in fashion. Yeah.
You were telling a story earlier when you first arrived, and you thought maybe that we'd be sitting behind a desk or I'd be behind a desk. And then you told a story about another famous person. Tell me that story.
Joan Rivers, as you may recall, used to co-host the Johnny Carson show.
Right, she
Well,
would come in
was
and
his
guest host.
sub.
And she had her own talk show too
That's
for
right,
a while.
she did. So she would come into showrooms and she would borrow. She didn't have to buy them. She would borrow samples because she was so thin. So she could wear bottle samples. So she would come in and she would pick a bunch of dresses of ours and take them. And one time she saw one she liked, but it had a very dramatic trimming down here. She said, Eugene, above the table. She said, someone's paying $1,000 for a bar mitzvah dress. You want it to be up here. You want the beading to be up here where everybody can see it.
I see.
And she said, as host, I like things where there's a lot of drama going on up here. So that's what we would pick for her, is above the table.
Yeah, I'm looking back, and I think you've got a picture of her in one of your dresses, and it was also a time of big shoulders and a lot of
Yes.
big stuff happening above the waist.
We knew this customer. This was my sister, my mother. Strong women in the 80s were still stuck typing. You know, men never learned how to type until the computer came. They were still stuck wearing pantyhose to work and 5-inch heels to work. Mm-hmm. So in order to assert themselves, the shoulder pad just evolved. Remember how big they were? I mean, they were enormous.
They were looking like linebackers.
And it was a way for us to address that customer. Instead of the aggressive shoulder,
right.
We gave very dramatic entrance-making dresses. Here I am.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So that was our niche.
And then, sadly, Alex passed. And that changed your business. It changed Eugene Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, Alex suffered from bipolar disorder. And it's not maybe well known that they are at elevated risk for suicide, even though it's something that we talked about often.
Right.
But the coping mechanism isn't there. And in spite of the fact that Alex had my support, my family's support, there are times when these deep, very deep, profound valleys that the bipolar person finds themselves in, they cannot move out of it. So he took his own life, yeah. And it really ended an era in my life. That I think that's one reason why I chose something so different. I was used to collaborating, you know,
Sure.
like Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Sure.
I did the music, Alex did the words. And when you're used to working that way, almost everything you do, you yearn for your collaborator.
Sure.
In the pipe organ work, it was a solo. It was a solo thing for me. This is something that I could do myself. It was a brand new niche. This little niche was just developing.
Yeah.
Digital organs are very good now. They go to Chartres Cathedral and they pay them thousands of dollars to be able to digitally record every single pipe in the organ. So you can buy, if you have a MIDI keyboard, you can buy the Chartres Cathedral organ,
Wow.
plug it in, and
Wow.
on your 3 keyboards, you can play, including the reverb that you would get
Sure.
with
Sure.
the stone surfaces.
Oh, sure. In a
Yeah.
huge cathedral type.
So it's wonderful, but you have this bank of really hideously ugly speakers
Right.
that need to be covered. So what I do is I build these pipe facades that are genuine organ pipes with the traditional casework and to cover up the speakers.
Now, in addition to the organ pipes, you've gotten into something else as well. Tell me about that.
Yes, I have metal left over, beautiful metal left over from doing the organ pipes, and I started making metal sculptures. And when I thought of a metal sculpture, the first thing that came to my mind was the gargoyles on the Chrysler Building. There are 8 of them, and they all have names. They have these very macho German names. They were named by the Chrysler family.
Okay.
Which is kind of great to know because they're up there.
I'm surprised they weren't named after family members.
Like Fritz.
Well, yeah, okay. Or
Yes.
Hans or something, you know.
I guess Fritz Chrysler was a violinist, right? I don't think he was the car company.
And he certainly wasn't a gargoyle type. I didn't know personally, so I can't say. Your faith plays a role in much of what you do, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
How so?
Growing up as a Mennonite and as a conscientious objector, my generation was very deeply formed by the Vietnam War and by the draft and by our friends in high school and college, friends who were killed in Vietnam. Now everyone agrees that was a very senseless war. And as a Mennonite and as a pacifist, that has really formed the way that I look at life. I look at the life of Jesus as the best way that I know. I know there are many other ways and many other prophets that other people would follow, but Jesus makes the most sense to me.
He's
for
your
my
main
life.
guy. Yeah.
Yes.
I get that. Yeah.
So yes, I do. I do have a faith that I like to think guides my decisions in life.
Why do you still work? I mean, you're at a certain age. I'm guessing you're over 50.
You're very
And
good.
so why do you still work?
Well, I really enjoy work. I enjoy work. And what else would I do? I don't know what else I would do if I didn't have. I like making stuff. I always have.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. I make stuff still.
Are there any things that, aside from your faith, that inspire you, or you get a creative idea that, gee, I think I'd like to make something else?
Yes, all the time. Yeah, that happens to me a lot. Right now I'm working on the flowers that Eugene Alexander was known for, these very dramatic flowers. And I'm working on an idea for possibly marketing some of the devices that I invented to make the flowers.
I
I'm
see.
a frustrated inventor.
I see. So those flowers that you were so famous for, actually there was some machinery involved.
Yes.
I am
Pleating
intrigued.
devices and forms and they were really unusual. The Eugene Alexander flowers were
Yeah.
very recognizable, and to stand up, they had to have things like fishing line in them. You know. I used to go to we had a store called the Tackle Box on Main Street, and we used fishing line in a lot, like in our chiffon hems and things. And we used some heavy fishing line. And one time the guy asked me, he said, "Eugene, you must have a fleet of boats, fishing boats, because you're my biggest customer." I said, so I brought in a picture of the dress and I showed him what we do. And he was just so amazed. He thought that was so awesome.
I'll bet. So there's more to see, more waiting ahead.
Yes.
I look forward to learning more about that.
Thank you.
Eugene, thank you so much for being here, and look forward to learning about the additional adventures on your life path. Well, that's it for Suncoast People. I'm Robert Tim, and I do hope that you send an email, let us know what you think, and if you know anybody or even yourself who has a story to tell, perhaps climbing that second mountain that I refer to, that's the book written by David Brooks, or perhaps just an interesting transition that maybe you've been through in your life or know someone. We'd look forward to hearing from you. But in the meantime, thanks again, and thanks for watching.